Good morning, Mr. Sleka. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chairperson.
Are you ready?
We are ready to proceed, Chairperson.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. The witness today, Chairperson, is Professor Cecil Louwrens.
Yes.
He's called by the Eskom work stream in regard to the pre-suspension letters and the metadata in relation thereto, especially to determine the author and modifier of those pre-suspension letters of the executives. Prof Louwrens will be ready to take the oath of affirmation.
Oh, it is Professor Louwrens, is that right?
That is correct, Chair.
Good morning, Professor Louwrens.
Good morning, Chair.
I understand that you are part of the investigation team of the Commission.
That is correct.
Thank you very much for coming to assist us on this matter that requires, I think, unusual expertise. So he will help us to make sense of some of the things that we don't understand. Okay, please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Cecil Louwrens.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
Help me God.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you,
Yes. Have you announced for the benefit of the public the area on which he'll be giving evidence?
Yes. So, sorry, DCJ.
Somebody was interfering with you.
Yeah, they were giving me notice that Prof Louwrens's oath was not captured by the recording.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We'll redo that.
Yes.
I was asking whether you have already informed the public for their benefit on what aspect Professor Louwrens will be testifying so that they can follow his evidence. If you haven't done so, please do so before he starts.
Yes.
But maybe let's redo the oath.
Yes.
What was wrong? Because I don't think he was speaking too softly. They just didn't put on their machines. Okay, all right. Let's register. And Professor Louwrens, let's just redo the oath. Hang on. I think the technicians are making some gestures. Okay, all right. Okay.
Please state your full names for the record.
Cecil Louwrens.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't.
Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Prof Louwrens has been called as an expert witness for a matter that has arisen before the Commission. That matter arose in the context of the affidavit provided to the Commission by Mr. Zitembe Khoza, in which an allegation is made that he had received 4 letters of suspension. He thinks that the letters were received from Mr. Tsotsi, but he doesn't know how. He has provided those letters with the metadata relating to each of those letters, in terms of which the author of the letter and of the letters and the last modifier of the letters are mentioned in the metadata. The Commission seeks to have established independently of what has been provided to it by Mr. Khoza, by way of an expert opinion or expert evidence, whether the author of the letter is indeed the person whose name is reflected on the metadata, and whether the last modifier of the letter is also the person reflected in the field for that name in the metadata. And Professor Louwrens is here for that reason, Chair.
Yes, no, that's fine. And as I understand the issues, his evidence also relates to whether there is any basis on which it can be said that somebody outside of Eskom had something to do with those letters of suspension prior to the 11th of March 2015. So the evidence revolves around the suspension of the executives. And if so, what is the basis for saying that? Or there might not be a scientific or technical basis. So that's part of what Professor Louwrens will assist us on, using the suspension letters that you have referred to. Okay, all right.
Correct.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Prof. Louwrens, once again, thank you for your availability in assisting the Commission. Could you, please, by way of a background, just state your qualifications and your expertise relevant to the assessment that you had been asked to perform?
Certainly. So, I own a consulting firm called Quintessence Digital Forensics. I've had that for the past 5 years, and that's basically why I'm also involved in the Commission, because of my involvement there. But
You
my
said you
background-
have had the consulting firm for how long?
5 years.
5 years?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But prior to that, I was involved in the industry. I was in the military for a number of years, where I was in the military intelligence and also did not computer forensics, but computer security. And I then worked for a major bank as a Chief Information Security Officer for a number of years. In that role, I also managed the digital forensics function of that bank. And I hold the following qualifications. First of all, BSc or BA, military science. BSc Honours Computer Science, MSc Computer Science, and then a PhD in Computer Science.
You mentioned BA. Is it BA Military Science or is it BSc Military Science? I see in the affidavit.
It's BA.
It's BA, so that should be corrected.
That should be corrected.
Okay, okay. Okay. And your consulting firm is in what sector? What does it do?
It's in digital forensics, so
Yes.
I do forensic investigations
Yes.
and analysis of well, criminal cases, civil cases.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Louwrens.
Thank you. Mr. Bergs, Professor Bergs, Louwrens, you've provided the Commission with an affidavit. The affidavit chairperson is found in Eskom Bundle 19, page 355.
Yep.
Are you there, Prof. Louwrens?
I've got it.
The affidavit runs up to page 370. 370. So you follow the black pagination on the left-hand corner, top left-hand corner. Okay.
You're speaking too softly, Mr. Louwrens.
You found a page, page
Yes, I did.
370. The affidavit, well, on that page, a signature appears above the name Cecil Louwrens. You see that?
Yes,
You confirm that to be your signature?
that is correct.
The affidavit is dated 19 April 2021. You confirm this to be your affidavit,
I do.
and you confirm the correctness of the contents thereof.
I do.
Thank you. So, person, I'll back leave to have the affidavit. Oh,
Before that, you want to let him confirm that it's got annexures and just to identify, to say from what page to what page the annexures run,
yes.
just so that I'm sure which ones are his annexures, which documents are not his annexures.
Correction. Prof. Louwrens, the affidavit also has annexures to it, starting from page 371. You see that?
That is correct.
Right. And there's a number of annexures to your affidavit, up to page 421.
That is correct.
You see that, which is the confirmatory affidavit of one non-Dumiso Zibi. You see that?
Yep.
There is also a confirmatory affidavit on page 423. Currently, it is the unsigned one. We have the signed one here of Mr. Tsepo Moleko.
That is
You
correct.
see that? Chairperson, while we are there, we have the signed copy of Mr. Moleko's affidavit, confirmatory affidavit, which I shall beg leave to hand up
Yeah,
to replace
Okay.
the unsigned one.
yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. And so the last annexure, Prof. Louwrens, is then the affidavit of confirmatory affidavit of Mr. Moleko on page 423.
That is correct.
Is that correct? Thank you, Chair. Then, Chairperson, I'll beg leave to have this affidavit of Professor Louwrens admitted as exhibit U42, point 1. Chair, the reason I'm pausing is because it's already marked exhibit 42, U42.
Oh, but it should be 42.1.
Point one. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
okay. Well, that correction must be made so that there is no confusion.
Yes.
Okay, the affidavit of Professor Cecil Louwrens, which starts at page 355, is admitted as an exhibit and will be marked as exhibit U 42.1.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
He had
Prof.
told us
Louwrens.
already about his academic qualifications.
Yes.
He had told us about his consulting firm and what sector his consulting firm is involved in. I think you can take it from there in terms of completing to qualify him as an expert.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Prof. Louwrens, we see from your affidavit that you have also been involved in academics.
That is correct.
Yes.
I've been involved at the University of Johannesburg, specifically lecturing digital forensics at honours level, and also computer security, risk management, and computer project management.
So your background, and I'm talking educational, from an educational point of view, your career is in IT.
That is correct.
Can you explain to the chairperson, when you're talking about digital forensics, what exactly does that refer to?
It is a similar field than normal forensics. The same principles apply, but the techniques are different, and obviously we have to rely a lot on technology and specific tools. So that then means that you would investigate, say for instance, a hard drive, that's a computer disk, from a suspect or whatever the case might be, and the hard drive would then be analyzed in detail as in terms of the consistency, the metadata, and that is the data about data. So say for instance we've got a file or a Word document. That Word document is associated with other information or other data, which is called metadata, which in fact describes that document. So if we want to know more about that document and the contents, how it was created and who created it, the metadata can actually provide us with some information to that extent. And then if we have access to a computer, the whole disk, you could also then get corroborative information in terms of the file system, and you could then see if it's consistent, and if that is consistent, that would lead us to make certain deductions from that. But it's basically establishing the facts from digital media.
Yes, continue. I'll come back to this later, but I think continue to qualify him.
And so how long were you employed at the university?
I was employed as a visiting professor.
As a visiting
Yes.
professor. For how long?
15 years.
That is from when to when, the 15 years?
That was from 2004 to 2019.
Okay. 2004 to 2009?
19.
Oh, 2019?
19, yes.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Okay, all right. And throughout that period, were you lecturing on computer science, IT, digital forensics. You were covering those.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And some of the students that you were teaching were doing honors, were at honors level?
Yes. I also,
And any students who were doing masters and doctorates that you might have supervised and promoted?
I did. I supervised a few master students and a few PhD students.
Okay. All right. Continue, Mr. Louwrens.
Have you yourself written articles in the field of digital forensics and IT?
Yes, I did. Specifically, articles that were presented at international conferences. And I also contributed to a chapter in one of the IFIP, it's International Federation for Information Processing, a book.
Well, maybe you can just give us the title of the book, if you are able to, and then maybe the title of the chapter that you wrote,
Okay.
if you can remember.
I'll get you
Otherwise you can supply it
precise. Yeah,
later.
but it's about the latest developments in computer forensics, and the chapter was about a framework for evaluating digital forensics within that framework.
Okay. Other than the chapter, that chapter in that book, and papers that you delivered at international conferences, would there be articles that you have published in articles or in journals or that fall within the sector of forensics, digital forensics, computer science, the field?
Specifically in computer science, I published an article on how to protect a computer by using, let's call it a biological model for computer security, so that it enables the computer to protect itself.
Okay, all right. Yes, Mr. Louwrens.
Thank you.
Or maybe just before Mr. Louwrens proceeds, just for the sake of completeness, what is the name of your consulting firm?
It's Quintessence Digital Forensics.
Yes, okay, all right. Continue, Mr. Louwrens.
Thank you. Prof Louwrens, then, talking of digital forensics, and which involves looking at the metadata and making an investigation, how often would you have done that sort of an investigation?
In terms of metadata,
I'm sorry, Mr. Louwrens.
Yes.
Maybe you should just cover what he has got to say under paragraph 4 up to 8, because it covers the other matters relating to his qualification as an expert. I think some you may have covered, but you can just check, make sure we cover all of them.
Yes.
Otherwise, he can just give that evidence.
Prof Louwrens, you see, you go back to page 355 from paragraph 4. You mentioned there that you have more than 41 years experience in security and related fields in financial services industry and military, comprising, and then you give a list. Let's let's deal with security, which I think is what you deal with in 4.1. When you say security, what are you referring to? Experience in security.
There are basically three types of security. The first would be physical security, which we all know, that's physical guarding, alarm systems, CCTV systems, and access control. Then there's the next one would be personnel security, which is the screening of personnel, making sure that the background checks are done and that people are or are what they purport to be. And the third one would be computer security or information security, being used interchangeably, where it goes about the protection of computers, the access control to computers, to systems, to files, to be able to monitor what happens on computer systems and to protect against viruses and malware.
And of the 28 years referred to in paragraph 4.1, how many of those years relate to the last part that you said, computers and
Computer security.
Yes.
I was Chief Information Security Officer since 2010. So
2010.
10 years.
Yes, okay.
But prior to that, I was always involved to a certain extent in information security.
Okay. Continue, Mr. Louwrens.
Then you mentioned in paragraph 4.2 that you have 9 years in intelligence and information security in military environment. I know that you did touch on the military environment. Could you elaborate a little more what the intelligence and information security in that environment would entail?
It was early years in the military in terms of computer security. It was a new field. I just completed my degree at Stellenbosch University, Saldanha, and I was then requested to write the first information security policy for the defense community. So I started off in information security in 1986. 86.
So you would have then been employed by the South African Defence Force?
That is correct.
Yeah. But what is it that you did when we're talking intelligence and information security?
In terms of information security, the first job that I had to do is to write a policy for information security, how to do it, what needs to be done, what the responsibilities are, etc. So the policy to govern information security, or computer security as it was called at that time. In military intelligence, basically, we monitored the external events, any threats to the country, etc. And also the computer security relates to that, because as we were using computer systems, it could have been threatened and it could have been abused and accessed and hacked. Although at that time hacking was not a known term, it just became more known later on as progressed.
And then you have 5 years, you say, in digital forensic consulting, so you would have consulted in digital forensics, which you've already explained.
Yes.
Can you tell the chairperson which years are those, if you can recall?
Which year?
Yeah, you say 5 years From
Yes.
which year to which?
2016.
Yes. And in paragraph 5, you say you have following digital forensic certificates, access data certified examiner, and NCASE certified examiner.
That is
So-
correct.
Yes, so what does this certificate mean? You are an examiner?
It means that I'm qualified to be an examiner using those specific products, and those are two of the more known products in the digital forensics environment.
And what products are you referring to?
The first product is Access Data, and the second one is Encase Forensics. So the Access Data Certified Examiner is the ACE qualification, and then the Encase Certified Examiner is the ENCE qualification. So both of those require examination, and you can only be certified if you pass that examination. It involves a practical component as well.
Are you able to give the chairperson insight into what is being referred to as access data?
Access Data is one of the leading products in the digital forensics tools market. It provides you with a platform or the ability to analyze data, hard drives, data that you capture from other electronic media, and then to categorize it and to display it in a way that's understandable, and also to report on it.
So by a way of example, what sort of data?
So, say for instance, there's a question about if somebody did something on a computer, we could then access the logs on that computer and look at that event and see if that event correlates to the action that person is accused of or is purported to have done. We can also then display the actions, the time, specific time that it happened. We can also see from that if that computer was connected to any other computer on the network, any other drives that were connected to it. For instance, a USB stick. If you connect that, it is recorded, so I can show that that happened. I can also identify, for instance, that USB drive by the serial number that is recorded.
So the tool, is it a software or an application?
It's a software tool. So it's actually a suite of products. It's
Okay.
called, yeah.
And then the NCASE, if you could also explain what it entails.
Encase is similar. It's got the same purpose, and it's got much of the same functionality. It's just two different tools. It's like having two sets of spanners. The one you use for this and the other for the other. So the reason why we would, in the digital forensic world, like to use more than one tool is to verify our results, to make sure that it is actually correct. And if there are any anomalies, to be able to explain that. So Encase provides the same functionality. It has some certain strengths in certain areas, and it's less well versed in others, for instance. But if you use both of those tools, you would get to the correct answer.
Yes. In regard to the assessment that the Commission had required you to do, did you have to use any of these tools?
Yes, I did. I specifically used in case because it displayed the information, the metadata that we needed to look at.
But then I'm ready to go into.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Before, I guess this would be the right time for me to ask. I see that in your affidavit, footnote 1, you tell us what metadata is. You say metadata is data that provides information about other data. In this case, it is data about the 4 MS Word documents in question.
That is correct.
Is that right? Now, if you are given a document and you have to establish in which computer or which computer was used to type it, your expertise enables you to do that.
No, that's not that easy to do. It depends on the document itself.
Oh, okay. So in some cases you can.
In some cases you can.
In some cases you can't.
Some cases you can't.
Okay.
And, yeah, we can talk about this case if you want to.
Yes, yes. So we'll come to that. I think that's fine. Maybe let's talk about this case and then we'll take it from there.
Right.
Yeah. Mr. Louwrens.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Prof Louwrens, you were given an email.
Well, I wanted to say earlier on, and I didn't say it, Mr. Louwrens and Professor Louwrens, that I hope Professor Louwrens won't feel embarrassed in any way by this. I wanted to say, well, if some of the people have said that the Commission has got some of the best investigators, and I just wanted to say, well, you look at these qualifications, you see why they say that.
Thank you, Chair.
It's a compliment, Prof Louwrens.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Prof Louwrens, you were given then an email with 4 letters attached to it.
That is correct.
The 4 letters titled pre-suspension letters.
That is correct.
And you were, together with those letters, provided with the metadata that we also received with the letters from one of the witnesses.
That is correct.
Yes. You refer to those letters in paragraph 11 of your affidavit. And what I would like you to do for the purposes of evidence is to take us through each letter.
Well, maybe before that, Mr. Selega, I think it's important that he deals with paragraph 10, which is, I think, where he articulates what he understood his mandate to be in terms of what he was asked to do.
Yes.
Do you want to deal with that, Professor Louwrens, what you understood your task to be?
I will, Chair. So I've been tasked to conduct a digital forensic assessment of the metadata of 4 Microsoft Word documents that were submitted into evidence into the Commission. The 4 Word documents were attached to an email, and I've got the images of that attached to Annexure CL1 here. So the first part of the Annexure CL1 contains an email that has been attached and forwarded. The second part of the Annexure contains the email itself. In other words, the original email contained another email that was forwarded as an attachment. So it was an email within an email. And within the second email were 4 documents attached. And those are the documents that I've been asked to look at.
Take it from there, Mr. Selega.
Yes. Let's go to CL1 quickly while we are here, which is on page 371.
What's the page? 371.
371. So, Prof. Louwrens, you say the 4 MS Word documents are attached to an email, images of which are contained in annexure CL1. So on that page 371 is an annexure marked CL1. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Is this what you are referring to as images of which? Images of an email?
That is correct. So the top portion of that is the image of the email. That is the first email that contains an attachment. You can see the little yellow block.
Yes.
And that yellow block refers to the next page, which is 372, which is the email containing the 4 documents.
Okay. Is that yellow block the one titled Special?
That is correct. Special docs.msg.
MSG. And sorry, just carry on. You were saying the next page is?
The next page is actually that yellow block.
Oh,
That email is contained in that yellow block. So if you open that yellow block, you find the next one on page 372.
I'm sorry. Going back to page 371, just below the yellow block, you have got something written there. What is that, Prof. Louwrens?
We've got the sender
Who is reflected as?
Khoza ZW at eskom.co.za.
Yes. And
So-
the subject?
Subject, special docs.
And the message there. if
Then
you're
there's a
able to-
message ID, which is a long string of letters,
Yes.
which uniquely identifies that message to the mail system.
Yeah.
And then it's the to field is Venita at lineinc.co.za.
Yes. Okay, all right. What do you make of that information there? What does that information mean? Namely, what appears next to the yellow block as well as the information underneath that?
It means that the email was sent from an email box called Khoza ZW at
Yes.
eskom.co.za
Yes.
to an email box called Venita at lineinc.co.za.
Okay, all right. Yes, continue, Mr.
Yes.
Selega.
so then you say when you click on the yellow box,
Yeah,
it opens up to what?
that is correct.
It opens up to, you were saying the documents from page 372.
That is correct.
And what do we find there in the yellow folder or box?
We have then an email that was attached, and the email was from an email address called September Khoza, which is then the same address as the previous one, Khoza ZW at eskom.co.za. And then we've got 4 Word documents attached. The little W in the blue boxes is very small, but you can make it out. Means it's a Word document. Then the documents, the first one is called pre-suspension dm.docx The second one is called pre-suspension FD.docx. Third one is called pre-suspension JM.docx.
Is it MK?
Sorry, K. And the fourth one is pre-suspension.PM.docx.
This email you are referring to, could you determine where it came from, or who was the addressor and the addressee?
Yes, in this sense that we put through the evidence that we've got from in the Commission systems, evidence previously seized from Eskom, I could discover the same documents, and I could actually find this email in the mailbox of PRASA ZW.
And who was he addressing the email to?
It was exactly the same here as Benita at line.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have the date for this exchange of email.
Yes, let me just go through this.
Is that the 14th?
14th of March at 2015 at 13:20. But that is Universal Central Time, so we must add 2 hours for local time.
I'm sorry, that date, that time is for what? For the sending of an email of what?
It was the email that is imaged here
Yeah.
was sent at that date and time.
Yes, that was on the 14th.
14th
Of
of
March.
March 2015,
Yes. And what time?
13:20.
Yes.
36
Yes.
plus 2 hours. So in
Oh,
South
yes.
African time, it would be 15:20.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Then, Prof. Louwrens, the documents, MS Word documents you have indicated as pre-suspensions DM, FD, MK, and TM, if you click on that, let's say the DM one first, what do you find?
It is a document that purports to be a pre-suspension document addressed to one of the addressees.
Just look at page 373.
Please say again.
Page 373.
373.
They are pre-suspension letters, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if we look at CL2, the pre-suspension DM.docx, it's a document from reportedly Dan Murakane, Group Executive, Group Capital, dated 11th of March 2015.
You did say addressed to him, not from...
Yeah, addressed to
Yes.
Dan
Okay.
Murakane. Yes,
And the date given is 11 March 2015 on the document.
correct.
Okay.
And it's an invitation to a pre-suspension meeting. And then a few points follow.
Yes.
So there's the document reading, Dear Mr. Marukani, invitation to a pre-suspension meeting. Correct.
That is correct.
Yes. For the sake of completeness, because I think they are all the same, isn't it?
Yes.
I think let's read one into the record. Prof. Louwrens, would you please just read that one into the record?
The whole letter.
Yeah,
I'll do
starting
that.
from dear Mr. Marukane.
Okay. Dear Mr. Marokane, invitation to a pre-suspension meeting. The company is presently conducting an investigation into allegations of misconduct allegedly committed by you. The allegations of misconduct, which will be investigated, relate to, amongst others, the following. 1.1. The chairman of the emergency committee as the chairman of the emergency committee, you have been negligent in the management of the electricity system during the times of emergency that resulted to unnecessary load shedding. 1.2. You were grossly negligent in managing the build program for Medupi that resulted in delays and cost overruns. 1.3. You acted irregularly in administering and managing the coal purchase contracts to the detriment of Eskom. 2. The company has not completed the investigations. The purpose of the investigations is to establish whether there are grounds for disciplinary action. Having regard to the 2.1, seriousness of the allegations, and 2.2, the possibility that your presence may jeopardize the investigation into the alleged misconduct. The company is of the view that you should be suspended on full pay pending the finalization of the investigation. 3. You are temporarily suspended until further notice. 4. You are invited to make a representation to the chairperson of the board of directors. 5. The meeting will be held on 12th March 2015 at 9:45. 6. During the meeting, you will have the following rights. 6.1. You are entitled to be present at the meeting. 6.2. You are entitled to be represented at the meeting by a fellow employee or an employee representative. 6.3. You are entitled to have the facility of an interpreter if so required. 6.4. You are entitled to confer with your representative at reasonable times before, during, and after the meeting. 6.5. You are entitled personally or through your representative to question us as to the reasons why we believe that you should be suspended. 7. We envisage that our investigation should be completed within a period of 4 weeks. And then...
Yes, there's no name for the author, but there is a space, and then there is a sentence saying, I, Dan Morokane, acknowledge receipt of this notice to attend a pre-suspension hearing, and the space is provided for his signature and date, and after that, there is space provided for the signature of the person serving the notice, but those were not signed. Okay. I say that they are not exactly the same in terms of the allegations.
The allegations.
Yeah,
That's
but let's deal with this for now, and then this one, and then we'll take it from there. Or unless you think we should just deal with all of them, and then you want to deal with all of them.
I think so, Chair.
Okay, then.
On the others,
then continue.
Yes.
Then continue, Mr. Selega. Just proceed as you intended to.
Yes. Prof Louwrens, so that would be the first annexure to the email on page 372. There are 4 annexures. There's another one titled Pre-Suspension FD. Look at page 377.
That is correct.
Well, before you go to 377, would you let him tell me what the document at 375 represents, which comes immediately after the letter that he has read?
Page 375, we've got the metadata that are extracted from that document.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. And that's the metadata that you use to interpret and come to certain conclusions.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, that's fine. And are they at 375 and 376?
Yes. What I did there, we've got two systems. The one is the one that I've extracted from a case, and on 376 is our system relativity.
Yeah,
I've extracted the metadata from there.
yes.
And what is important there is that see on 376 at the bottom the MD5 hash. I'll
Yes.
explain what the hash is. The hash is like a fingerprint for the document.
Yeah,
It's a unique number that represents a document. If one bit changes in the document, then that number will change.
okay.
So it's important that that number is the same as the number that the document that I actually investigated.
Okay.
So you would see that on page 375, the second line of that table is the MD5 hash,
Yes,
and in the last line of 376 is also a MD5 hash, and those hashes are exactly the same,
okay,
which is important because that means that I've dealt with exactly the same document.
okay,
And I also refer to that document if we come to the evidence later from the other expert report. They also use that MD5 to identify the document, so it's important to note that those documents are exactly the same.
okay, okay. Yes, Mr. Silega?
Yeah. So, President, I think we could go into the metadata
Yes, let's do that.
per letter.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
okay.
So, Prof Louwrens, you were asked to conduct digital forensic assessment of the metadata.
That is
So
correct.
you are saying page 375, and we will deal with each letter at one time. Page 375 is the metadata in relation to the letter pre-suspension DM.
That is correct.
That is addressed to Mr. Den Marokani.
That is
Yes,
right.
but just before you proceed, just to make sure one can follow, you have said that you have confirmed that you were asked to conduct a digital forensic assessment. Is that the correct
That is
term?
correct, yes.
Yes. When a person conducts that assessment, digital forensic assessment, what would they be looking for? You conduct that assessment in order to get what? To achieve what? What is the outcome of such an assessment?
In this case, I've only had the actual Word documents and obviously the email.
Yes.
So let's deal with the Word documents first.
And you must just take it that I know nothing about IT and so on, so don't feel that you shouldn't explain some of the basic terms to me.
I will do that.
Yeah.
So the Word documents, it's Microsoft Word is a product from Microsoft. It's part of the Office products, Microsoft Office. And it's widely used as a word processing tool or software. Now, what's specific about the documents that we are dealing with here is they are docx. If you look at the later part of the name, it's the name of the document, and then we've got a .docx. That qualifies that document as a certain type of Word document. Now, docx is the latest standard that is used in Microsoft Word. And it also then indicates that it's got certain metadata, EXIF, we call it EXIF metadata, which is embedded in that document, which you could then investigate. So by using digital forensic tools, like in case, for instance, you could then extract that information. The information is also visible, some of the information is also visible on the document itself. If you go into the document and you go into what we would call info, file info, it will display a page, and the page will then display who created the document and who last modified the document.
So you use some instrument to look at the document,
That is correct. Yes.
and then you can see certain images and information.
Yes.
Okay. And
So-
that information could tell you a number of things, including who may have had something to do with the document in one way or another.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you look at the table on 375, that is the information that I would then extract, or could extract from the document. So I don't know if you want me to deal with that.
Using what we just talked about, or using a number of instruments.
A number of instruments.
Yeah.
I normally use in case,
Yeah.
but as I said, I verified this specifically with another tool
Yes.
to make sure that I understand it correctly, because it's also a bit open to interpretation. They don't always give you all the information. Maybe they, say for instance, you get a value of 3. The question is, what does it mean? Then you have to corroborate that with other tools to see it's 3 minutes, for instance.
Okay, all right. Continue, Mr.
Yeah.
Louwrens.
Prof. Louwrens, just before you move on, does it mean if I don't have the NCase tool in my computer, I wouldn't be able to generate this information, or to come up with, to pull out this information?
No, you could use various other tools to actually do this, but NCase enables you to do that.
Yes. Just say that, okay. You could what?
You could use a number of other tools also to extract it, other
Yeah.
than NCase.
Yes. What I'm asking you is, take my standard laptop.
Yes.
I buy it from whichever shop. I have the normal word processing, Microsoft, but I don't have the tools you're referring to. Does it mean without those tools, I wouldn't be able here to extract this information?
You would be able to extract some of the information, not
Some of
all of it, because Word does actually display some of the information.
I see. So then, let's get you clearly. In this case, you are given the emails and you were given the attachments to the emails. You are then asked to do or conduct digital forensic assessment of the metadata. In relation to what you have been given. Tell the chairperson what then, what should we understand you to be doing when you conduct a digital forensic assessment in relation to the documents that you were given? Do you know what, well, firstly is what we understand you to be doing, and secondly, what is the objective in your exercise?
In this case, it was specifically to look at who created the document, and also who last modified the document. But also, if we look at any analysis, you would also always look at time, when it was done. Does it make sense? For instance, was the document created before the email was sent? Because it's impossible to have it created after. And if it was created after, as in one of the, or some of these metadata indicates, you could maybe look at why the dates are inconsistent, and then you have to know a lot about the file system how it actually creates dates, changes dates if you move files from one drive to the other, and also if you access the file, how it's updated. So you look at all those things, ancillary things as well. But what's important to note here, these are the values recorded. How they relate to real life is something different. So in this case, the values recorded for the creator was Suzanne Daniels. And the last modified field.
And what was the date when she created the document? Or you are still going to come to that? It's fine if you are still going to come to that.
I can give it to you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to say if she created the document.
Or you can say when
I can give you the
document was
create
created.
date of the document.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
So the create date of the document was 2015. It's 10th of March, 1639. And that is also then Universal Central Time, so plus 2 hours, so it's 1839 South African time.
Okay. Yes. Continue, Mr. Slugger.
Yes. Okay. Prof, we will come to that. Let's just lay the groundwork relative to your investigation or forensic assessment. Please go back to page 357.
357.
357. So your first task is what?
I just mentioned Mr. Seleka for what it's worth. I was hoping we would finish within an hour. I will be having the witness for today in due course. I had said he should be here at 10:30. So, but it's important that we cover this properly. Yes, but I thought I must just mention that because when we previously spoke, today was vacant.
That's right.
So I just wanted to know that
Okay.
we don't have a lot of time, but we must do Professor Louwrens' evidence properly.
Yes.
Okay, let's continue.
Yes. Prof. Louwrens, page 357, just to lay the groundwork. Paragraph 10, you have already stated what the first purpose is, or the first requirement to you was in regard to the documentation that were given to you. And then in paragraph 12, you also say that you have also been asked to express an opinion on the forensic report issued by a company called Sianre.
That is correct.
Okay. Let's go to paragraph 13. We will come to your opinion in regard to that opinion of Sianre. Paragraph 13 says, the evidence that I examined was forensically acquired and processed. When you say forensically, what do you mean quickly on that?
What I mean is that we've got a principle that whenever you acquire or source evidence or data, you take care not to change anything. So when it is then acquired, that media or disk or whatever is right protected so that you can't change it. And the tools actually enable you to verify that it's not been changed. So it's an exact copy of the data.
Yeah. So this will be your, again, computer-related tools.
Correct.
So you then say, I have examined the chain of custody documentation associated with the evidence and found it intact. The custody the chain of custody documentation. What does that mean?
Chair, it means that whenever we seize data or source data or acquire data, we fill in a form which tracks exactly who is involved, what the source is of that data. We get the signatures, the timing, we note the media, the serial numbers, etc. on that form. And then that documentation accompanies the evidence to the point where we sign it into our secure storage facility, and we can then verify that the data or the evidence was not tampered with, and we know exactly what every handoff would be from one person to another.
So that, you confirm in this case, was followed and it was found to be intact.
That is correct.
Turn to page 358. Paragraph 14, you say the email in question was sent from the mailbox of COSA. You've already testified on that. On 14, let me read the bracket. COSA zw@eskom.co.za, the COSA email mailbox on 14 March 2014 at 1:36 p.m. UTC to Venita at klaininc.co.za. Paragraph 16, I did not find an email received by the COSA email mailbox with the said documents attached to it on the Commission's e-discovery platform for the purposes of performing my assessment. Yes, the question is, given what you're saying there, could you see where did Mr. COSA obtain the documents?
No, not from the evidence that I had. I could not see that. There are many other ways that he could have gotten that other than receiving it through his email box. Like, for instance, another email or a physical USB drive.
So, are you saying there is no indication that his email to Ms. Venita was an email he was forwarding from somewhere else and then sending it to Ms. Venita Klein?
That is correct. I couldn't find.
You couldn't find it?
No.
So he would have been the creator of that email and then attached the letters to it to send to Ms. Venita Klein.
That would be correct.
I just want to make sure I understand that. Did you have access to his computer, and is that what you would need to have access to see whether he had received the documents from somebody else?
Yes, Chair. I only had access to the mailbox, the image that we collected from his mailbox.
Yes.
If I had access to his computer, I might find more information relevant to this.
Yes.
For instance, if he had other email addresses,
Yes.
or if that document resides, or those documents resides on his computer.
Oh, okay.
But at this stage, this is all I have. I cannot say.
Yes. Okay. And about the creator of the documents, you say there is a possibility that it could be, it could have been created in his computer, but you don't know that for sure.
Yes, for the reason is that the creator and the last modified metadata can be changed. It's very easy to change, and if you know what to do, you can actually change that. So you cannot rely on that on its own. You have to have corroborative information or evidence.
Yes. But if it's not been changed, it would be giving one information about who created it, if we knew that it had not been changed.
If we knew it was not changed, it normally picks up the user of that computer. In other words, if you have an account on that computer, you've got a username. That username is then reflected in those fields. And if it's not changed, it's normally the username.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So the username will be the name of the person who uses that computer or who owns the computer.
No, I wouldn't go that far. It would be the username that was assigned to that.
I see. So my computer could have SLK as the username,
Yes,
as opposed to Pule as the username. Is that what you're saying?
that's why I say you can have Mickey Mouse as the user.
You can have Mickey Mouse as the username.
But if your computer reflects that, or if a document reflects your username, let's say your username is Bax. That doesn't mean, does it, that that email was necessarily created in your computer? Someone can use another computer and just put in that username.
Correct. You
Okay.
could do that.
But if that username, which happens to be your username, is reflected in relation to a document that is found in your computer, is that not a sufficient basis to say, until somebody comes up with evidence that somebody else interfered with this computer, with your computer, you must be the person who created that document? Is that not a basis to say this document is found in Professor Louwrens' computer? It reflects Bex as the username. Bex is the username that Professor Louwrens uses. Therefore, until somebody tells me otherwise, I should take it that he created it. Is that something that scientifically, technologically is sound or not?
Not from a technological point of view, but it's a reasonable assumption if you look at, say for instance, if it was a corporate computer, where the usernames were defined, and where there are specific rules and policies not to share password, and not to allow access to that computer, then it would be reasonable to hold that person responsible for the actions on that computer. So, yes, in that sense, forensically, there's nothing that I can tell other than if those policies were in place, and I can't say that from the documents.
And when you refer to policies, that's the corroborative evidence you are talking about in your opinion, your affidavit.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, yes. So you look at what forensics provides us with, and you look at surrounding evidence, and then you use the two, and based on that, you might be justified to reach a certain conclusion.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Thank you. Prof Louwrens, you mentioned having access to the mailbox of Mr. Khoza, but you didn't have access to the computer.
That is correct.
Maybe you need to explain to the chairperson, how does that work?
And what difference it makes to have access to the mailbox but not to the computer?
Chair, it makes a huge difference. What we got was every big company corporate environment has got its own mail management system, mail service, and so on. So what we've got is a copy of the mailbox on the server, not the mailbox on his personal computer. So I only had access to the mail-related evidence and not to any other system-related evidence that might be on the computer. Now, on the computer, we would find logs, we would find the master file table. It would provide us with a list of documents on that computer, events, etc., that we can corroborate. We could also look at the specific setup of the users, the access rights of those users, what they could and couldn't do. So that would make a huge difference in evaluating if anybody tampered with a document or if somebody created a document. We could also look at the templates for the document if that resides on that computer.
Okay.
Yes, so his mailbox, Mr. Khoza's mailbox, were you able to access it from the Eskom server?
No, it was actually seized by our investigators and then subsequently loaded onto our relativity database or e-discovery platform, and I could access it from there.
So it was seized from where? It was seized from where?
From Eskom?
From Eskom.
Yes,
Is that what you're dealing with?
in the chain of custody documentation.
Say again?
In the chain of custody documentation.
The chain of custody document. So page 360, you may turn over quickly. 360 from paragraph 21 to 25, is that what you're dealing with there about obtaining this Mr. Khoza's mailbox from Eskom ultimately to the Commission?
Yes, that is correct.
So you say in paragraph 21, I've located an alternative source of the 4MS Word documents in the email mailbox of Khoza, email mailbox on the Commission's e-discovery platform, Relativity. So you call it an alternative source. Well, explain to the chairperson.
Chair, the primary source was documents that we received relating to the submission of those 4 documents to the Commission, and also...
So that means the actual document as provided by Mr. Khoza?
No. I didn't get those actual documents.
Yes.
I got paper copies of the documents.
So the Eskom workstream provided you with those documents?
The electronic copy, yes.
And you're saying that's the primary source?
Yes,
And then the alternative source is what you're referring to here?
correct.
So you went, in your exercise, you didn't just rely on the documents given to you, you took a step further.
Yes, I did, because in terms of electronic analysis, I needed electronic copies of those documents.
Yeah.
And as I said previously, Seanray, the other company, provided us with the MD5 hashes for those documents, so I could find the exact documents. So I knew I was working with the same documents.
So that's right. Then paragraph 23 explains further. The COSA email mailbox was subsequently forensically extracted and loaded onto the Relativity e-discovery platform, and you refer to Annexure CL8 for the relativity container path and unique evidence number recorded on relativity as, and you give the whole number there. A copy of the chain of custody document for this unique evidence number, as well as its entry in the DFT Digital Evidence Register, is contained in Annexure CL9, here to and reflect the following. The evidence was collated on 22 February 2019 at 14:04 a.m. from one non-Dumiso Ubi. I've seen from the confirmatory affidavit that the
Zibi.
spelling should be corrected. Zibi, chairperson, Z-I-B-I,
Yes.
the Chief Information Officer, and also she said she was the acting Chief Information Officer. You saw that, Prof Louwrens. At the Eskom head office by another DFT, that is Digital Forensic Team member, Mr. Tsepo Muleko. The evidence was collected on a 1 terabyte Western Digital hard drive with the serial number, which you give there. See the second page of Annexure CL9. The evidence was signed into the DFT Commission's Digital Evidence Register as number 104. And you refer to the annexure. From there above, the COC. What does COC stands for?
Chain of custody document.
Chain of evidence.
What does it represent? What does it mean?
Chain of custody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That refers to the process undertaken to obtain the information forensically. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So from there above, the COC or chain of custody seems to be intact and the evidence can be relied upon. And you attach the confirmatory affidavits. Okay. So you are confident that the Commission can rely on this information?
I'm confident that the chain of custody is intact and that the evidence is what it purports to be.
Is what it purports to. Thank you. So then, in the interest of time, maybe
But
you...
remember, Mr. Siliga,
Yes.
we've got to do it properly. So the interest of time mustn't compromise.
Yeah, thank you,
the-
Chair. Prof Louwrens, let's go back to page
Yeah.
358. Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 16, 1.6, you say, my examination of the metadata of the 4 MS Word documents attached to the email in question revealed that all 4 of the MS Word documents were created from the custom office templates folder using the letterhead template Jan 2015.dotx template on a computer with a username Daniels M.
I'm sorry, where are you now, Mr. Siliga?
Paragraph, page 358, paragraph 16. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But also just remember to let him give the evidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prof Louwrens.
Well, at some stage we were on the metadata relating to the first document.
Yes.
I thought that might be quicker if he says, this is what this the information that has been revealed, this is what it means
Yes.
about the first document, that pre-suspension letter. Maybe would it not be easier that way, Professor Louwrens?
Yes.
Because
agree.
as I understand it, you looked at that first document,
Yes.
pre-suspension letter, and that document that comes after it is the one that gives you that tells you what you found.
That is correct.
Is that right?
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
so if we deal with that,
Yes.
he will tell us what he found, and then we take it from there.
Correct.
I think let's do it that way. Then we can do that with each one of the letters.
Yes, and Prof Louwrens, not because I thought that paragraph 16 was also important, but you will address it
You
in the
can do
course.
paragraph 16. Yes.
Just explain that, what you're saying there in paragraph 16 to the chairperson, just before we go
Yeah.
into.
Chairperson, it's important, the template that was used, that's like a format for that type of document, was stored in a computer which the username is Daniels M. So that is the closest connection I can make to a computer and a user. Obviously, I could not say if the user, Daniels M, is Suzanne Daniels.
Yes, yes. So all you can say is your assessment or investigation of the document revealed this name as the user.
Correct.
On the face of it, and you must just tell me if I'm putting words into your mouth. On the face of it, it means, unless there is evidence to the contrary, one can read it to mean it's Daniels who created it, without saying it's Susan Daniels or you say whoever created it used this username. Or is that not correct?
To be correct, the template that was used
Yes.
came from a computer with that name. Does not mean there's no connection between the creator and the template username.
Okay. The template used
Yes,
to create the document had that username.
yes.
That's as far as you can go.
That is as far as I can go.
Yes.
So if I can explain it to you, if I send you a template,
Yeah.
that template would reflect, or the metadata would reflect that that template came from me.
Yeah.
If you then use that template to edit a document or create another document,
Yes.
it would reflect your name.
Yes. 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 Okay. All right. But if you have sent me a template reflecting your name, can I alter it before I send it to somebody else, not to reflect your name, but to reflect Mr. Selega's name?
Only on the creator data or the last modified data. The other date, the template folder name is embedded, so that
I can't change
you
that.
can't change. Well, I can't say you can never change that.
Yes,
but it's
generally speaking.
generally speaking, you can't change that.
Yes. So if you have sent me a document using your particular template reflecting your name, generally speaking, if I forward this to somebody else, it would still show that it came from a template with your user.
Yes.
Okay. So, therefore, is it correct? And you must just tell me where, when I'm asking you something that falls outside of your expertise. Therefore, what you can't say is that it was Professor Louwrens who created the document.
That is correct.
That you can't say.
That I can't say.
But what you can say is that the template on which it was created, if that is technologically correct to put it like that, the template on which it was created had this particular username.
Yeah, at a particular
Yes.
username.
And then it's up to somebody else to determine whose username was that.
That is correct.
That's something else.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. No, that's helpful. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Louwrens.
Thank you, Chair. Is the template, or did the template in this case, Prof Louwrens, remain the same?
It's impossible for me to say. I can only say that if you compare it to other documents that look the same, it does not have necessarily the same template name, then there is a small difference in that the address block below where the names of the directors were reflected. That was absent from the documents that I looked at.
What was absent?
The address block, if you look at the directors below, at the footer of the document,
Yes.
then normally a list of directors. And in the documents that I examined, those were absent. So that's all that I could maybe pick up. I couldn't tell if that was part of the original document or not, template or not.
Okay.
Chair, could we quickly go to Eskom Bundle 12, Chairperson,
Yes.
just to exhaust this point? Page 50. Prof Louwrens, I want to show you something, and you can explain this to the Chairperson. On Eskom Bundle 12, page 50.
I continue.
Yes. There is a document there, Prof Louwrens, which appears to be a template as a date, inquiries tell, say, dear, it's on Eskom logo, says, intention to suspend pending an investigation into allegations of misconduct. And the details are there. Eskom has received information in terms of which it is alleged that you committed various acts of misconduct. The allegations relate to the following. Space is left open there to fill in. In the light of the serious nature of the allegations of misconduct against you, I believe that your presence in the workplace will have a negative impact on the organization and your contractual duties. I've therefore taken a preliminary decision to suspend you from work with full pay pending the outcome of the disciplinary hearing. My preliminary decision to suspend you is informed by the following. Then a space is left open to complete as well. This appears to be a template. It goes on to page 51 with information to be filled where there are open spaces. Now, could you explain to the chairperson what were you talking about in regard to the information that is not, or that has been excluded from the pre-suspension letters that we're talking about?
If we refer to page 373,
Of Eskom Bundle 19.
you would see that, that there's an image of the pre-suspension dm.docx. And at the bottom of that page, the bottom left is a black line, a vertical line. And right next to it, to the right, it's open space, nothing there. If you look at the Eskom 12, page 50, the document handed to you now. At the bottom of that page,
Okay, we are now comparing the document
Yes.
at Eskom Bundle 19, page 373, and the document at Eskom Bundle 12, page 50.
that is correct.
Okay,
You would see at the bottom of the page 50 document, there's Human Resources Division and the address, etc. And if you
That was
compare it to the other one,
excluded.
it's absent.
Yes.
That's the only
difference.
difference that I can see from the template.
Well, I guess that that's one set of information that is not there, but of course the information, the content of the two documents at least the way it is structured doesn't seem to be the same. It may well be that the substance is the same. Mr. Selek, I don't know if you have had a chance to compare them in terms of substance.
Yes, Chair, in terms of particularly the rights of the employee to be legally represented, to make representations, the wording seems to be the same.
Well, the heading on the one at page 50 is intention to suspend pending an investigation to allegations of misconduct. The one at page 373, the heading is invitation to a pre-suspension meeting. Yeah, okay.
Yes, the person who will see what comes before this particular document is an exchange between certain Eskom officials and the attorneys.
The document at page 50.
Yes,
Yeah.
the document at page 50 is a correspondence of emails starting on page 43 in Eskom Bundle 12, where instructions have been given to Bowman Gilfillan, and they had requested to be provided with the suspension policies and the suspension process. And this is what they were provided with. Amongst others,
And what date is that?
it's from
16 March. I see at page 43,
correct, Chair.
emails dated 16 March.
Correct.
Yes.
And the suspension process. From Mr. Nel Tsolanku to Jerry Kapu.
I see that there is an email at page 44 of
Yes.
Bundle 12
Yes.
from Elsie Pule to Philip Mashefo, dated 11 March 2015 at 09:27, which says, please urgently compile a step-by-step process to follow when suspending an F-ban.
Correct.
Yes.
And when you turn the page, 45, you see suspension process,
Yes.
and they give the process there. Then on page 47 is what appears to be a template of an intention to effect a suspension pending investigation.
Yeah.
Then you have on page 48 a notice of suspension, which is also, on the face of it, appears to be a template.
Yeah.
And lastly, is that also what appears to be a template on page 50, which is an intention to suspend.
Yeah.
So these were exchanged within Eskom and then ultimately with the attorneys, Bowman Gilfillan.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's continue.
Prof Louwrens, let's deal then with the metadata. When you performed the forensic assessment of the metadata, and you can take the chairperson to whichever relevant page you wish, particularly in respect of the first letter, and explain your findings in respect of your forensic investigation.
Thank you. If we turn to page 375,
Yes.
pre-suspension dm.docx, and I won't go through all of the metadata because all of them are not relevant to this case, so I'll
Yes.
deal with what is relevant in my opinion.
Yes. Okay. And the document at 373 to which the metadata relate is a letter addressed to Dan Marokane, Group Executive, Group Capital. Yeah, okay.
That is correct, yes. So I've dealt with the MD5 hash previously, so that is just to verify that I've been working with the correct document and it was not changed by anybody.
And when you say it's the same document, that is now the same document that came from the mailbox of PRASA dot whatever.
Yes.
Yes,
But
okay.
that and also the same document that Henry, the other forensics company, evaluated.
Okay.
Right. We've dealt with the template, and you can see that the path there, the template path is users, and the username in this instance is Daniels M / documents.
Just tell me where about on the page that is.
It's
Always says template.
template, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay. It's /users, and after that normally the username is listed, the user that's registered on the computer. In this case, the name there is Daniels M / documents / custom office templates / letterhead template Jan 2015.x. Now the .x is different than the docx. .x means it's a template, so you can use it to create your own documents, but using a template as a framework. It's also important here, if you go down to application, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 down.
Yes, I can see that.
The application is Microsoft Macintosh Word. That's important.
What does application mean?
That means that the software that created that document was Microsoft Macintosh Word, the word Apple computer. It runs on the Apple computer, Macintosh Apple computer. So,
Okay, you'll have to just speak up a little bit more so that we hear this very important part of your evidence and it can be recorded properly.
so it means it was created on the Apple computer or Macintosh computer, and the application or the software that ran and created the document was Microsoft Macintosh Word. And why this is important is I've looked at Ms. Daniel's email box and documents that I found in her email box, and that was created by Microsoft Word and not Macintosh Word. Okay, so there is a difference.
Okay, that's the difference.
Yes.
So it's consistent with the username.
Yes, but what it means is the The documents I found on Mrs. Daniels's
Mailbox.
mailbox
Yeah.
was not created on the same computer as this.
Oh, okay, okay. So, her ones are not Microsoft Macintosh,
That's correct.
and her ones are what? Her one is what?
Microsoft Word for Windows.
Or not Microsoft Macintosh Word?
Yes.
Okay. So you say from that the conclusion is what?
Well, I can infer that it was not created on the same computer.
On the same computer?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right. Yes, continue.
So, sorry, Chair, Prof Louwrens, just by way of illustration of the two different computer products,
Yes.
I have an Apple computer on my right, and here on my left is a Dell computer. This one uses Microsoft Word,
Correct.
and the Apple computer uses
Macintosh.
Macintosh. So what you are saying to the chairperson is the creation of the document in terms of the metadata, or just before that, the software in the two are different,
Correct.
used by two different companies.
That is correct.
And that's why you're able to see that Macintosh Word, you can ascribe it to an Apple computer as opposed to a normal computer that uses a Word software.
That is correct.
So what you're saying to the chairperson is, according to this metadata, the application Microsoft Macintosh Word, which shows that the letter would have been created by an Apple computer, that would have been a different product altogether.
That is correct.
And what you find in the documents you find in Ms. Daniels' computer are from the MS Word and not an Apple computer.
That is correct.
You couldn't find any document, is that what you're saying to the chairperson, in her, is it her computer or her mailbox?
Her mailbox.
You couldn't find any document that is created on an Apple computer.
I couldn't say that. I didn't do an exhaustive search on that. I only looked for similar documents.
Now, if I have two or more computers, they could obviously be different. One could be Microsoft Macintosh Word, another one, another Word.
Yes.
You would have to examine mailboxes in all of them to exclude me completely from, or to exclude the possibility that the document was created in one of them.
Yes, I would
You would have to
I
examine,
have to examine
the
both, yeah.
mailboxes in all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But what you are able to say is, if you have examined the mailbox in relation to a particular computer, you are able to say, if there is no correlation between the words, then it's not, it wasn't created in the particular computer.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Siliga?
Yes. Thank you, Prof. Louwrens. You may carry on in your explanation of the metadata. So we
The
went-
next point of interest is that it says titles of parts, basically the heading, which is the business unit or division. That's the bottom part of the document. It's just the title of that placeholder. And the company that this computer has been registered to is Eskom. Okay. Then,
What does that mean? That the company that's registered as Eskom, is that the company that is registered as the owner of the Microsoft
Of the software, yes.
of the software.
Yes.
Okay, and I take it that from that you can safely infer or conclude, and you must just tell me if that's not justifiable, conclude that an Eskom computer was used, or Eskom software was used, whether it was an Eskom person or somebody from outside, but it was Eskom, or can you not say that in terms of technology?
It depends how the software was registered, but when you register your operating system, the company is entered there and it's part of the licensing agreement.
Yes.
So it's reasonable to assume that it was part of Eskom.
So is it reasonable to infer that the document was created using an Eskom computer? Or that's going too far?
That's going too far because this relates mostly to the template and the software and so on. But I think we could infer that it definitely leans towards Eskom.
And Eskom, yes.
Otherwise,
Because what are the chances that somebody...
You have to register your own computer if you're not part of Eskom as Eskom.
Yes. So we can say an Eskom computer was used to create it, in all probability. Is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Yeah, okay.
Prof Louwrens, I see there's a little bit of hesitation there. Let me ask the question this way. You have said the template, the document used here is a template.
Yes.
They would have used a template to create a letter. Then that template is, or is it not, in an application that is owned by Eskom, a computer application owned by Eskom, or I can make that?
No, you can't make that distinction.
Okay.
What normally happens is that a company would create templates for use by its staff.
Yes.
And those templates would then be stored on the individual computers for use, and you could then edit those templates for your use.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that the person that edited the document was part of Eskom.
I see. Okay. I see what you're saying. So are you saying then, with my computer, which is not a MacBook, which is not an Apple computer, I could have stored this template and send it to my junior who has a Mac laptop, and she could then have used the template to create a letter, and that's why the application would then reflect her computer application and not mine.
Yes.
Is that what you explained?
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Continue.
But in the field that's very important here is the creator field, and the value in that field was Suzanne Daniels.
I'm sorry, whereabouts are you on the document, on the page?
It's page 375 in the
Yes.
table. It's near the bottom, the creator.
Theater, yes,
Yes.
okay.
So that was what was recorded as the creator. As I said previously, it could have been picked up by the system from the user, but it could also have been edited. Very easy to edit. I can change the creator to whoever I want.
Okay, okay. Okay, so you say that part, one can't rely a lot on its own,
On its own, you cannot rely on that.
but you can rely on it together with other information.
Yes. Yeah.
What if with the information about application, from that information you said, we can say that probably the template or the letter that was created on an Eskom computer. Is that right?
That is correct.
So then we can say, well, there is somebody called, or there was somebody called Susan Daniels at Eskom at the time, but you are saying that on its own is not terribly helpful, because somebody who is not Susan Daniels, if they want to falsely implicate Susan Daniels, can easily tamper with the system to make sure that it reflects her as the creator. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
But I would imagine that somebody who does that would obviously be seeking to implicate somebody. If I interfere with the system so as to make sure that the creator of the document is Professor Louwrens in circumstances where it is not, and I know it, I would be seeking to falsely implicate Professor Louwrens in being the creator of the document. Is that right?
Yes, that would be the, if you do not understand how easy it is to change that field, you would be led to believe that that person created the document.
Yes. Could it be changed negligently?
No.
You have got to intend to change it.
You've got to intentionally change it.
Yes. And if I change it, I have to know what it was before I changed it, isn't it?
No, not necessarily.
I might not know.
It is displayed, so you would know in any case what it was. And then you, specifically on this field, what you would do is you would then add another creator, type in your own name or somebody else's name, and then you would remove the original creator.
So, but is the position that if we go to the true creator, the one who created the document, when he or she creates it, it's reflected that that's the person who created it.
Yes.
If somebody else, if it's sent, the document is sent to somebody, or somebody else comes and uses this same computer, they can change it. But when they change it, they know who the creator was immediately, was reflected as immediately before they changed it.
Yes.
There's no way they would not know.
That is correct, because you have to replace that
Yeah.
name
Yeah,
or that value.
yes,
So you cannot just delete it.
yes,
So you can't negligently just
yeah.
remove it.
You have got to have the intention to change
You
it.
have to add another one,
Yeah,
then remove the previous one.
yes. So which therefore means that I can only change the original creator to effectively distort the position. Otherwise, I have no reason to change it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would suppose that is the inference.
Yes, yes. Because why change who created it? Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Siller.
Yeah. Prof. Louwrens, so we have the template, and then we have the creation of the letters themselves. Could it be that the template would show, for instance, in this case, Ms. Daniels as the creator, not of the letter, but of the template?
If we have the template, if we have the computer, and we could access that template, then we could see what the creator is.
I see.
So, yeah, I think that is basically
Yes.
the only thing that we can say.
Okay. So you will need access to the template, or the computer which has the template,
Yes.
in order to determine who the author of the template is.
Yes,
In this case, this author is the author not of the template, but of the letter itself.
correct.
Is that what? Okay.
That is the creator that we're talking about. It's the creator of the letter,
Creator of the letter.
not necessarily of the template.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else on?
Yes, the next, just below the creator on the same table, last modified by, the value there is Salim Issa. So again, the last modified information is also easy to change, but you cannot do that directly. What you
Just
have
repeat that, please.
you-
It's easy to change,
but
but
you cannot do it directly. So you
directly.
can, yeah, directly. You have to go to another screen to actually change that value. So you go to the option screen and you do personalization of that document. And then you can change the name. Now, the name reflected in the personalization options is usually the name that is connected to the user. So that's where it picks up who the user is. So I can then change that user to somebody else. And when I save that and I apply it, the next time I save that document, the last modified would then be reflected as that new user that I've changed.
So what do you make of the fact that here the information or what you found is that it said last modified by Salim Essa? What do you make of that?
Well, firstly, as with the previous creator, you cannot rely on that solely because it can be changed to any value. But if the user was called Salim Issa on a computer, it would pick it up as Salim Issa. But on its own, it's very easy to change. That's all I can say.
Yes. Now, this information last modified by Salim Essa that's part of the information you get by examining the letter itself. Is that right?
Correct, the metadata on the letter.
The,
Yes.
the metadata on the letter.
Yes.
But the metadata doesn't tell you where or in what computer the modification happened.
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, in this case, we only had the Word document itself to
Yes.
analyze.
Yes.
So I don't have that information.
Yes.
The only the relationship to the computer was or is the application used, the Microsoft Macintosh Word,
Yes.
which then was the last application used to modify the document.
So the modification, are you able to say, as you did with regard to application, are you able to say whether the modification, the last modification, was effected in a Microsoft Macintosh Word or the other?
Microsoft Macintosh Word.
It's the,
Microsoft Macintosh Word.
it was, the modification took place in that.
That
Was
the
effected
last,
through that.
yeah, saved.
So, does that mean that one can infer reasonably that the letter was probably created using an Eskom computer, and that the last modification was also effected using an Eskom computer, or not?
No, I would not say that. The fact that the software belongs to Eskom,
Yeah.
that
That's
seems to
given.
indicate Eskom, but it could have been edited on another computer,
Yes.
and it could have been modified and sent. And so it does not mean it's necessarily an Eskom computer.
Yes. What would you need to look at in order to be able to be more precise on, for example, what computer was used, or is that something that you can't? Computer as Eskom computer or non-Eskom computer. What would you need to be able to reach a conclusion on that, or is that something that's difficult to achieve?
I would say the best option would be to have access to the computers involved or seemingly involved.
Yes.
The analysis of those computers themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Without them, it's very circumstantial in the sense that it can be easily changed,
Yes.
and forensically I can't support
Yes.
anything more.
Yes. Okay. If you were to get the computer that, or computers that maybe Ms. Daniels, while she was at Eskom, was using, having access to those computers, would that help in one way or another, seeing that she's alleged to have been the creator here?
That would definitely help.
Yes.
I can't say if it will definitively give an answer.
Yeah, but it could help.
Could help, definitely, yes.
Yes. Okay. Has that been tried, Mr. Seleka? Are they?
Obtaining her computer, I don't know offhand,
Yes.
Chairperson, but I know they have imaged her hard drive,
Yeah.
something to that effect.
Mm.
Even during her disciplinary hearing,
Yes.
which information has been made available to the Commission.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with the investigators to find out.
Do you need the actual computer, or as long as you have,
If I have a forensic image of that computer, that
then
would
you should be
fine.
able? Okay. So I think that should be pursued.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I guess the same can be done in regard to Mr. Koza's one computer.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yes. Prof Louwrens, will it help to find out from Eskom whether during this time, 2015, March 2015, Eskom would have provided its employees with Apple computers?
Yes, it would.
It would help.
Definitely help, yes.
Because, as you say, the last modification was in an Apple computer.
That's correct.
Okay. Then you have, obviously, the last three columns is about the dates, or last three rows, it's about the dates when the letter was last printed, created, and modified.
That is correct.
So the date of creation of the letter, date of modification, date of printing. How certain can you be that those are the dates you give, or the dates that appear here, are definitely the dates?
Can only be certain to the extent that the computer's clock was
Yeah.
set correctly.
Yes.
So,
So assuming it was set correctly, that should be,
that should be.
yeah. Well, that suggests to me that in the absence of any evidence that it was set incorrectly, that you would be able to say the probabilities are that the creation and the modification of the letter and the printing was on that day.
Yes, we
Is that-
could probably that if it's a corporate computer, the time and date settings are normally managed centrally.
Yeah,
So the user would not be able to do the
To
settings
change
on
the
their
dates.
own, or change it on their own.
yes,
So if this was a corporate computer, chances are that the dates are correct.
yeah,
If it's not, then it can be anything.
yeah. Okay, so maybe you could explore all of those aspects, because then I think you would need to come back to say, I've done this part as well, and in the light of this part, this is what I'm able to say. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Prof Louwrens, I see that. Let me give you a chance to. I see that the times, that there's a discrepancy of some interest there in respect of the creation date and modification date time. The document, the dates are the same, the 10th of March 2015, all three, but I see the dates for creation and modification, the times, I beg your pardon,
Yes,
are identical, 1639, 1639.
yes,
But the last print time is 1625,
correct.
which is before 1639,
Before it was created.
before it was created.
Yes.
So what do you say to that?
Yeah, that's an anomaly that is within the Windows file system. If you copy a file across from one volume to another, in other words, from one drive to another, it assumes a creation date of that time that you copied the file.
Yeah.
So the file then would have existed, and in this case, been available to print, but then the file was copied across to another drive, and then it assumed a new creation date. And that explains it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I-
So you say it's an anomaly.
Yeah.
It's an anomaly, it's a peculiarity. I don't know how to explain that. It's not something that you would expect. You would expect that the creation date would stay the same, but it does not work that way with Microsoft Windows.
So there's nothing strange about it.
Nothing strange about it.
Okay.
Okay, I think, Mr. Seleka, we should stop here because obviously there is a need for Professor Louwrens to come back
Yes.
so we can do the rest when he comes back.
Okay.
So then let's stop here. How long do you think it might take you to be ready to come back after doing the outstanding parts that?
It's difficult to say, Chair, but if I've got access to the information, a couple of weeks maybe.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe 2 weeks,
I don't know.
or maybe more than that.
Maybe more than that, because nothing
It takes
works,
time.
yeah, works out as it should.
Okay, no, that's all right. Okay, let us say, as soon as you are ready, you will let Mr. Seleka know, and he will tell me, and then I guess you'll have to do a supplementary affidavit, I think, and then we can call you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, all right, but thank you very much. I'll excuse you now, but you will be coming back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silica.
I'm going to adjourn to enable the PRASA workstream to come in, and then I will continue with them. We adjourn. You may be seated, Mr. Montana. Good morning.
Morning, Chairperson.
Yes. I'm very poor with estimating time. So I'm sorry that I thought we would finish within an hour and we ended up taking so long. So I apologize for that. Let's continue. Yesterday's oath will continue to apply today, Mr. Montana. Okay, all right.
As you please. Mr. Montana, I now want to deal with the allegations made by Ms. Martha Ngoyi in her affidavit of the 17th of February 2020. That affidavit appears in Bundle E1 as Exhibit SS7B, and it starts at page 277.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Mr. Soni, I just decided to put one matter on record emanating from yesterday, Chair.
Yes, yes.
I think that we dealt with the issues of the companies, and I kept on referring to one company as Mashonisa, that Mr. Molefe referred to as Mashonisa. The name of the company is Mazwe Financial Services.
Okay.
So I wanted to put that on record.
Yes.
The second thing, Chair, that I want to put on record, there was a report that was placed before me. I think the report was written by Mr. Jabulile Major.
Mm-hmm.
And Chair, I did raise a concern with one of his conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I didn't know, and on inquiry, I find that, well, this was, in fact, the junior chap who wrote that report. In fact, some of the people had indicated that the chap is not even capable of writing such a report. Now, it was placed before me yesterday, Chair. So I wanted to ask the Commission to, of course, confirm the position of this chap with PRASA, number one, so, and confirm whether that is their report. Because if it is, Chair, I may want, I'm considering exercising my rights in terms of Rule 3.4 to apply for cross-examination of I think Mr. Majola. I don't know him, but I think that Chair, from what I could gather, people have said, look, there's just no way we would have written this report, and so I want to confirm that formally and exercise my right, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Soni, I just wanted to deal with this.
Okay. I don't know how much you know about the author of that report, Mr. Soni, but if you don't, then the information can be obtained in terms of what his position is. Is he still at PRASA? What was his position at the time of writing the report? And any other relevant information about him.
We will make this inquiry.
Yes, I guess another issue would be, why would he have been identified as the person to conduct the investigation or to do the report? Is that because of the position he held, or why was it? And then that information can then be shared with Mr. Montana. And it may well be that because it's just a report, it may well be that consideration should be given to whether he should not be required to pose to an affidavit and say whether that is his report, and say how it came about that he did that report or did the investigation. of course, with all of that in mind, Mr. Soni, there would also be the question of what the place and role of that report is in these proceedings,
Yes.
or whether it was attached simply because somebody who was deposing to an affidavit had to mention that there was some report that was put together and this is the report, or whether it's going to be relied upon much for purpose of these proceedings. You know, when people do an affidavit, they can attach a lot of things, and not everything they attach is important for particular proceedings.
Yes.
But you could reflect on that.
I will. Sir.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Montana, can we then go on with Ms. Ngoyi's allegations? I want to start at paragraph 8, which is on page 279. The page numbers are on the right-hand side in red. She says, I've been asked by the Commission to provide information on maladministration at PRASA, of which I am aware insofar as it relates to state capture. And then in paragraph 9, she says, in dealing with these matters, I consider it will be helpful to begin with the following observation. In my respectful view, maladministration and possibly corruption are quite widespread at PRASA. This was particularly while Mr. Montana was the CEO. If you want to react to that?
Chair, I totally reject that. I think, in fact, she starts with that view from paragraph 6 of a affidavit. I reject that, Chair. I think in my testimony, I will show, in fact, that Mrs. Ngoye was herself at the heart of some of the issues that have been made here.
And then she says, she finishes paragraph 9 saying that there were certain entities and persons who were known to be close to you, and at paragraph 10 she says, among those are two individuals, Mr. Roy Mudley and Mr. Mackenzie Mabunda. You want to react to that?
Chair, I dealt with these matters yesterday, that entities were identified, linked to me, and those that they were doing work for them, who were even appointed regularly, they were being championed. So again, Chair, I'll be consistent with that view.
Yes, I understand. It says the entities with which Mr. Mudley was alleged to be associated are Siangena Technologies, Strawberry Walks, Royal Security, and Prodigy. Can we accept that Mr. Mudley was associated with those four entities?
No, Chair, I do not want. I know that with Royal Security, yes, he was. But when I was still at PRASA, there was no relationship. I don't know of any relationship of Mr. Mudley with Strawberry Works. I don't know of any relationship, and I think I'll deal with Strawberry Works in much greater detail, Chair. And I read after I left PRASA that there was a close relationship between Siangena and Mr. Mudley that didn't happen when I was there. I wasn't aware of it at that point in time. We dealt with Mr. Mabunda, Siaya, and I think I explained that in great detail about our relationship with the Germans, Chair, and he's involved with them. They don't make them my entities closer to Mr. Montana. They were appointed by PRASA and its board.
And of course, Prodigy we dealt with yesterday.
Yesterday, indeed, Chair. Yes.
All right. When we look at paragraph 11, she says, these are individuals and entities which have benefited most handsomely from contracts that were dubiously awarded to them or implemented in a highly dubious manner.
Okay, one of the companies that benefited handsomely from PRASA was Worksman Satins. And Mrs. Ngoye deposed to an affidavit when she was aware of the facts. So you can see, Chair, this is the same kind of thing. So if you look at again, Mr. Soni, to go back to paragraph 6 of her affidavit, if you read what she's saying there, consistent with what Mr. Molefe said, consistent with what Mr. Dingesai says, that these are people who project themselves as so clean, who want to point fingers at other people, but 4 fingers, in fact, pointing at them, Chair. It's so false. And I think, Chair, that we have to deal with the individual contracts. I think yesterday we dealt with Prodigy. So this broad brush is not going to help the Commission to actually get to the facts. I'm interested in the facts rather than a broad brush.
Yeah, we'll deal with them. Yeah.
And then she says most of these contracts are the subject of litigation. And I just mentioned those that have come before the Commission and have been dealt with or will be dealt with. One is Swifambo, we know. The other is Siangena, which we are going to deal with when we deal with the rest of Ms. Ngoye's affidavit. Then there's Prodigy, which Mr. Dingeswaya dealt with. And then the Siaya matters, which, as we know, it was in your absence that there is litigation between them, between PRASA and them. And I can perhaps just deal with one matter. You're aware that PRASA has refused to pay Siaya DB, and you in fact testified at the liquidation hearings. All right. Can I then ask us to go to paragraph 14? It says that she's going to deal with the following matters. How she became, this is Ms. Ngoye, how she became aware of the influence of Mr. Roy Moodley and her interactions with you as CEO and the dispute between Strawberry Walks and Siaya Group. We are not going to deal with the Siaya Group here for different reasons. So these are the matters we will deal with.
Well, Chair, I would like the Chair to note the fact that in almost exactly the same formulation is what you find in Mr. Dingiswayo's affidavit. So you could see Mr. Molefe says traverse the same route. So it's very interesting, Chair. But again, I think a focus on facts will help us to deal with the matters properly.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Now, she says in paragraph 15, which I'm going to deal with in some detail. When I say detail, I just want us to establish the extent to which you dispute what she says. She says she first encountered Strawberry Works while she was the CEO of Intersight. She was, in fact, the CEO.
That's correct.
Of
That's correct, Chair.
And she says it came about as follows. First, on about the 23rd of July 2011, PRASA, through Intersight Assets Investment SOC Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of PRASA, and Umjanji Media, concluded an advertising agreement following an invitation for companies to submit proposals for media broadcasting, advertising, and broadcasting services in respect of various assets held by PRASA. You accept that as a general?
Yes, sir.
And then she says the agreement had commenced on the 1st of June and was for a 5-year period unless terminated or renewed by the parties. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And she says but on the 31st of August 2011, and I'm just going to point out, it's not in her affidavit, it's about 5 weeks after the contract was concluded, and with the consent of PRASA, Umjanji ceded portions of its rights under the advertising agreement to Strawberry Walks. And another entity called Siatembana Trading. Are you aware of that?
Chair was aware with them ceding to Strawberry Works, but I wasn't aware. I'm hearing about Siatembana trading for the first time.
But can we accept that that may have happened? Or?
It may be, Chair, but I wasn't aware. Personally.
No, I understand. Okay. Then at paragraph 15.3, she says, although Intersight and not PRASA was the party to the agreement during the contract period, we at Intersight received instructions from Mr. Montana on how to deal with the advertising portfolio, more specifically the Strawberry Works contract. But she's making 2 points there. Firstly, she says that the contract was between Umjanji and thereafter Strawberry Walks and Intersight. That I understand is correct.
It was between, the main contract was between PRASA and Umjanji.
Umjanji, and that was ceded to Strawberry
No,
Walks.
part of that.
Oh, sorry,
contract,
part of it, yes.
Part of that, the outdoor advertising part of that contract is what was ceded to Strawberry.
Yes. Now she says that they received instructions from you how to deal with the advertising portfolio and particularly Strawberry Walks.
Well, Chair, it was not. I never gave such an instruction. There was a draft that was submitted to me on how the relationship between Umjanji and Strawberry was going to be structured on our portfolio. So I'd written notes to say, no, it can't be dealt with in that way because we'll lose money as PRASA. And Chair, I want to make I think that after I present, I want to make a more detailed response to what Mrs. Ngoe is saying because the facts are being somehow twisted a bit to present a particular picture. But I think let's distinguish the facts first and then before I make my comments.
Well, I guess you will have a better feel, Mr. Soni, whether it's better that he should deal with that now or whether a little later. He's saying at some stage he would like to give a more substantive response. Yes. If it's more convenient for him to do that later, he will do that later. But I'm just saying, yes. Be aware that he...
No, I understand perfectly.
Yes.
It may be better to follow the affidavit.
Yeah.
Know the extent to which Mr. Montana disagrees with what, or disputes what Mr. Ngoyi is saying.
Yeah.
And then in regard to any inferences or any allegations that Ms. Ngoyi makes about improprieties, we can deal with that at the end of what it has been agreed are the basic facts on which there's common cause.
Okay, so where would that put us at the end when you are done with the affidavit or at some stage?
It will be at the end of paragraph 15.
Oh, okay, all right, that's fine.
She says that at paragraph 15.4, she was once summoned to a meeting with representatives of Strawberry Walks. Now, I take it, and she's not making allegations about you on this. Are you aware of this meeting?
No, Chair.
Okay.
No, Chair.
But she goes on in paragraph 15.4, I was given instructions by representatives of Strawberry Walks on how I ought to manage the advertising portfolio and how I was expected to take instructions from them. Are you aware of that?
No, I was not part of the meeting, Chair.
I was even told that they have the power to remove the portfolio from Intersight. I take it that too you don't know about. Is that correct, Mr.
Chair, I was not part of the meeting.
Yes.
Just looking at it, I can see that this is, afterthought. It makes people draft things that. But I was not part of the meeting, so for the
Yes.
record,
Yes.
I wouldn't confirm or deny
Yes,
if I was not
yes.
part of the meeting.
Yes, I think, Mr. Tony, you can go on with the paragraphs that relate to what was discussed at meeting, but he doesn't know anything.
No,
about
I
it, yeah.
understand.
But you
It
can-
is a necessary, because
Yeah.
it has a consequence.
No, that's
And,
fine.
and I can understand why Mr. Montana is saying this is an afterthought,
Yeah.
because there's a thread that's followed through thereafter.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Then at paragraph 15.5, she says that she was told that there were instructions from Mr. Montana to remove instructions we had given to our legal representatives, Hogan Lovells, who were representing PRASA in a litigation instituted by Prime Media challenging the advertising tender process. Now, I just want to deal with two things, Mr. Montana. Did you give instructions, or did you say to Strawberry Walks that you were going to remove Hogan Lovells as PRASA's attorneys of record in the dispute
No, Chair,
with Prime
Chair,
Media?
Chair, that is not correct, but I think she's saying it is, she says it's still part, is at the meeting.
Yes.
Which I was never party to. So I don't know who said that to her specifically. She doesn't mention, she just mentioned that she was told by a representative. She mentioned three representatives, Mr. Maraj, Mr. Ajvir, Mr. Selvin Moodley. Those are the three people who were part of the meeting. She doesn't say, so this person said this. She says representative. So it's so general, I don't even know. But I never, probably at this time, because she's describing the earlier period of the contract, I hadn't interacted with any of these players in the industry.
Okay. I hear you, Mr. Montana, but I just want us to, if you just bear with me for a moment or two to deal with another allegation and then come to the extent to which she says she communicated with you. So let's deal, I understand you say you didn't know about this, you were not part of the meeting. Then she says...
Sorry, Mr. Soni, I accept that, except that I'm not saying communicated with her. I'm saying I've never communicated with Strawberry at the time that she's describing.
Yes, no, I understand.
Yeah.
She says, I was told that Mr. Montana had instructed that I terminate the mandate of Hogan Lovells and appoint BBM attorneys. I take it you'd never told anybody from Strawberry Works that that should be done.
I had the legal advisor who was dealing with this particular matter, other than our group corporate function. In my office, I had the legal advisor who would consider quite a number of things. And this was one of the issues, precisely because there was a major litigation issue on this matter. And probably I would have discussed with, but I can see that my legal advisor was not even part of the meeting that is mentioned. So the question still arises, who said all of those things to Mrs. Ngoye? And that is why I say, I don't know, I was not part of the meeting, but for me it sounds like a good afterthought, Chair, for an affidavit.
Right. Now, I just want to make this one point. She says that whether you said it or not, BBM attorneys were not on PRASA's panel of attorneys at the time. Is that correct?
Chair, I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. In the same way that I also learned that the worksmen were part of the PRASA panel. And when I checked at that time, they were not. So again, here's someone who picks up on this one and ignores onto this one. So, Chair, I don't deal with panels. I don't even, in my entire period, I never knew who was on the panel, who was not.
And she says at paragraph 15.6, I did indicate to Mr. Montana that the move would amount to wasteful expenditure and that I was not willing to account for that, and further that it was not possible to appoint a firm that was not on the panel. Now, is that correct or not?
You know, Mr. Soni, Chair, I did Bantu education as well. But sometimes the style of writing becomes very important so that you follow a sequence. This person is told by someone at a meeting. But in paragraph 15, 16, he says, you indicate to Mr. Montana, who was never part of this meeting.
Yeah, well, I noticed that, Mr. Montana, that she was telling us in a few paragraphs about the discussion at the meeting, and she didn't include you as one of the people who were in that meeting. And as you pointed out, she didn't say who among the people who were at the meeting told her that you had instructed that she should terminate the mandate of Hogan Louwrens and appoint BBM attorneys. And then in the next paragraph, 15.6, she says, she did indicate to you that the move would amount to wasteful expenditure. But she doesn't say when in relation to the meeting. But in the paragraph that comes after that, she is talking about what happened after the meeting. So I don't know whether it's just a question of the arrangement of paragraphs or whether it's something else.
Chair, I think if you look at the previous paragraph, the underlying message is that the firm was appointed outside of the panel. I think the question will come, who appoints people to the panel, how they selected in all of that. I was not, that is why I was checking. My legal advisor, if she was part of the meeting, I would have said maybe she reflected discussion she had with me. But she was also not party to the meeting. And I wouldn't say what the other people said at the meeting specific. She doesn't also specify who said, and unless if the commission is provided with perhaps a record of that meeting, an actual recording of that meeting, so that we should know. So there are three people, and it's her, it's Mr. Hulele. Was Mr. Hulele's, what was his role in the meeting? All of those things, Chair, that I think that they raise a lot of questions and answers, as it were. But, Chair, there was never, even subsequent to whatever meetings that were held, any discussion about wasteful expenditure. That is not consistent with my own narrative, which I will present after Mr. Sonia dealt with paragraph 15.
Okay.
Mr. Montana, can we just now, I just want to put a question directly to you.
Yeah.
Did she speak to you about the fact that there was a suggestion that Hogan Louwrens be removed as PRASA's attorneys of record?
No, Chair. I think
Okay.
I think my legal advisor at the later stage did, when we're dealing with this what is it called, Prime Media's review application.
Okay. When you say your legal advisor did, do you mean did talk to you, did talk to her, Ms. Ngoye,
No, sorry, did talk to me, Chair.
about?
But about the, our team in respect of the litigation that were
Yes.
involved with Prime Media.
Yes.
And I think that's a separate matter to this, Chair. That is why
Oh.
I think, that is why I'm talking about afterthought. I can see
Yes.
issues are being, because somebody's in the organization, she's aware of what is happening, but she structures this thing in a way that supports. But that is why it doesn't speak to each other. And I'll deal with the issue, Chair, when I
Yes.
respond after this
No,
paragraph.
that's fine. But I think what you are saying is that there was a time when, in connection with the litigation relating to Primedia, when your legal advisor in your office spoke about changing the law firm representing.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes, that's what you are saying.
Exactly,
yeah.
Chair.
Okay, all right.
Well, not only spoke about it, but a decision was actually made and implemented to remove Hogan Lovells as PRASA's attorneys of record. Is that correct?
Chair, I think so. I didn't know who was ultimately our team there, but I think that that decision was
Was made.
taken, and it enjoyed my full support, Chair. And I'll
Yes.
explain why.
Okay.
She says then at the end of paragraph 15.6, oh, sorry, your legal advisor is Ms. Malini Naidu, is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Now, Mr. Mutana, just, and you must accept that we try to keep in our minds all the goings on. When you made application to the Secretary of the Commission to bring a delegation, one of the people whose names you mentioned in the letter to the Secretary was Ms. Malini Naidu?
That's correct, Chair.
Now, it's also said that the last group of attorneys who handled the matter for PRASA were Mirage attorneys. Are you aware of that?
No, Chair, I'm not aware.
Because she says then that they coincidentally were the attorneys of record of Strawberry Walks.
Attorneys of record on which matter?
In the Prime Media matter.
Is it?
Yes.
Chair, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Can I just ask you as a general proposition, though, and I accept, and it would be improper for PRASA, where there's a dispute raised by Prime Media against PRASA and perhaps Strawberry Walks, to have the same attorney as Strawberry Walks.
No, Chair, it will be improper, unless if the parties
No, I
agree and there's no conflict of interest there, but generally you want to separate these teams.
absolutely. All right. Paragraph 15.7, she says, after the meeting, Intersite continued to manage the portfolio, but under very difficult circumstances, as threats were constantly received about the mandate being removed from Intersite. Now, of course, that's not a matter that concerns you. I mean, she's not making an allegation that the threats came from you. She's saying the threats came from Strawberry Walks.
But Chair, I think you see, she makes that point, and then at the end it says, but we told Mr. Montana that he was required to provide a resolution from the board. No such reason was provided to Intersite. I don't know where this discussion took place. Yeah. And what I think is happening here, Chair, is that Ms. Ngoye may be, because she was a member of the executive, she may be aware of a matter taking place there. So she had conveniently brought these things. So for example, when she talks about the issue of a panel, or when we have a discussion about Prime Media, she then conflates that to support the view that she wants to advance. So I want for us to disaggregate those issues. If we deal with strawberry, we deal with strawberry. We deal with prime media, we do so that, Chair, we can separate fact from fiction. Because I think that's what is happening here. So all things are put in there, and here's a hero, a heroine. I told Mr. Montana. So the meeting takes place, I'm not part of it. I told Mr. Montana. And I think, Chair, the only matter that she discussed with me, by the way, was when Mrs. Hope Zinde, the late Hope Zinde, may so rest in peace, had gone to her office because they took some files from there. And she said that was not done properly by the two respective people. And she raised that with me. She wanted to inquire whether they were sent by me. I said, no, and Chair explained. Again, the matter doesn't relate to this the completely different context. And I supported her because I said it can't be done that way. So again, Chair, it said because we're going to discuss a matter and Mrs. Zinde is late, he can't even dispose, and I wouldn't want to discuss that matter of someone who's no longer there and able to defend herself. Not that I was going to speak ill of her, no, that's not what I'm saying. But I think that Ms. Ngoye is stretching at straws, trying to mix issues, and I want to separate them so that this commission has a clear picture. I mean, yes, she's trying to chase Mr. Moodley, but I think she's doing it in the wrong way, Chair.
All right. Let's just look at the part you've dealt with in paragraph 15.7, the second sentence. She says she told you that you were first required to provide a resolution of the board, but there was no resolution that was provided. Now, I'm going to ask you a direct question on this. Did she raise the issue of the threatened removal of the oversight of the contract from Intersight to PRASA with you?
No, Chair. Again, Chair, perhaps maybe, let me see, this paragraph 15 is long, and some of the issues that I need to deal with, I think I want to address them in that context. Chair, there was no such a discussion, there was no such a threat. I think that Ms. Ngoye is confusing the issue of us creating a new division, which is called PRASA Corporate Real Estate Solution, in short called PRASA CRES. Now, this is a new division that handles our properties. So because Intersight historically was what we call Intersight Property Management Services, we changed its role so that it became Intersight Asset Investment. And the new company that we created was then was then going to manage the property portfolio with everything that goes with it, including advertising on those properties. Okay. The reason why we took that decision had to do with it was a tax efficiency issue. Because what happened is that PRASA would pay Intersight a management fee, but because Intersight was a subsidiary, it was paying tax when its parent company was not paying tax. So we paid them 50 million to manage our properties, and it paid almost 18 to 20% of that money back to SARS. So we get a subsidy from government, and we pass the 50 million, 100 million, whatever amount in the form of a management fee, and it goes back to government in the form of a tax. So we wanted to ensure that we maximize our revenues, our income. So that is why I'm saying Ms. Ngoye is confusing all these issues into one. To say, no, these things were happening, not because of the strategy of the business, but to support strawberry works. In fact, Chair, the facts will show evidence that I'll put before this commission, which is part of my thing. The notion that we manage the portfolio under very difficult circumstances. It's actually so false that Ms. Ngoye worked with Strawberry. The agreement to cede this contract to Strawberry from Umjanji or Proventage, the entity that won the contract, was signed by Mrs. Ngoye. So she says there in one of her in the closing paragraph, let me go back to paragraph 15 point, I think this 15.2. The conclusion of that paragraph says, at the time I was already the CEO of Intersight. You see, that's where you find dishonesty. It doesn't say, I signed this agreement to seat, signed between her and Strawberry as the CEO of Intersight. She says, at the time I was already the CEO of Intersight. Now the chair, of course, you look at that, it doesn't tell you the story, the truth. Part of my annexures, I provide where she signed, and I've got chairs, volumes of emails, which shows, for example, the nature of the interaction between Intersight under Mrs. Ngoye's term, and more specifically, her right-hand person who was managing this at Intersight was a chair by the name of Mr. His name is Chauke. Mr. Chauke managed that. The emails that exchange is one where our subsidiary was actually working and forging this relationship because they had to do that. Now she comes 5 years later, the country has got a commission on state capture, corruption. She changes tune, she doesn't remember the facts. It's part of my annexures.
Sorry, Ms. Montana, and I don't want to. You might remember, I think on Friday, what we agreed on is when you have a version which may be contained in your affidavit, you will set it out here, so we don't have to be looking in different places. So I'm going to suggest, Chairperson, that Mr. Montana refers or sets out his version on these matters here as agreed on Friday. Otherwise, we're going to be all over the place. I don't want to stop him. I'm just saying that we're going to be back and forth on the same question.
I am not sure that I follow. What I do remember is that on Friday, one of the things I said was that he could tell me what is in his affidavit without referring to
Yes.
the paragraphs. Just tell
Yes.
me
Yes.
what I will later find
Yes.
in the affidavit when his affidavit is sorted out. I'm not sure whether that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm saying,
Oh,
Chairperson.
okay,
It's
okay.
That instead of now saying it's contained in my affidavit, but not saying what is said in the affidavit. I've got no in fact, I want to hear what Mr. Montana's version is, so we all have it. We know what.
I think the reason he may be doing that, but he's here, he can say, maybe is that you remember in regard to the issues under 15,
Yes.
the arrangement that has been made is that when you are done with paragraph 15, he'll then get a chance to give a substantive response to what Ms. Ngoye has said under paragraph 15. I take it
Chair,
that's why he has not gone into details, because that's the arrangement.
That's correct, Chair, and that is why I even said it seems paragraph 15 is very long.
Yes.
Because I realized that Mr. Soni was then, he wanted the answers.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps it's better, Chair, I suggest I make that input now.
Yeah.
And so that when Mr. Soni then takes me on, takes these issues in later paragraphs, he's fully aware of what my view is on this particular matter.
You're suggesting an amendment of the earlier arrangement.
Of the arrangement, that I do it now.
I've got no difficulty.
Is that
with
fine?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, all right. That's
Chair,
fine.
Chair, thanks very much. I think this matter is dealt with, of course, in detail in my affidavit. And I think it was done so, Chair, as a direct response to Rule 3.3. Because at that time I suggested to the Commission, I'm going to do an omnibus, but
Yeah.
I'll specifically indicate where I'm dealing with a response to a particular allegation.
Yes.
Chair, PRASA did issue a tender on advertising. I think it was in February 2010. This tender was then later awarded to a company called Proventage Stroke Omjanji Consortium. If you look at derailed, one of the issues the public protector mentioned, Chair, is that you have this Proventage, which put a bid, and it doesn't, the public protector, we don't understand how Umjanji as a consortium comes in there. So I think that is a context that the matter is raised in the public protector report. Chair, what has happened is that Proventage, I think that there were 19 companies that then responded to the PRASA tender. PRASA then had a team that evaluated this, and the head of that team, Chair, was none other than Mr. Tiro Hulele. So Mr. Tiro Hulele led the team, and then they selected Proventage Stroke Umjanji Media as a company to do all of that. This tender, Chair, was mainly not only about advertising, but it was for media and broadcasting services. It was advertising, media, advertising, media, and as well as broadcasting. They were all under one tender. Now, what happened, Chair? Strawberry, I think, was one of the companies that put a bid. It lost. That's the first issue. It lost, Chair. It had nothing to do with Roy Moodley. Lost the bid, but what happened is that bidders, as they do, they then agree to themselves, among themselves rather. My strength is on this, your strength is on that. Let's work together on this. So after it's signed, PRASA has signed a contract with Proventage. Proventage came back to PRASA. Proventage Stroke Umjanji came to PRASA and said, we want to seed part of the work because we want to bring a company that will help us to manage, because they've won the tender. The right on broadcasting, advertising, and media, they've got that right. They were awarded through a proper tender. So they said, no, we want to bring Strawberry. So that matter is elevated because when they want to bring a company in terms of, or to seed part of the contract or subcontract, our SCM policy provides that they must then formally apply to PRASA so that PRASA can satisfy itself that this company has the capacity to meet the obligations that are there. So, Chair, it was done, they applied. Then the agreement, the draft agreement was presented to us. That what Strawberry will do will then will work on the portfolio, pay Proventage, and then Proventage will pay to PRASA. I said, no, but if you allow that model, it means therefore that Proventage or Umjanji will take a cut before passing on the money. If they want to sit, then they must agree that Interside must have a direct relationship so that you don't have a middleman in that process. So when she said she spoke to me, Chair, it was not me actively going. As a CEO, I'm approached to say, here's an arrangement. And as a CEO who acts in the best, she says in affidavit, we must act in the best interest of the company. Here's one instance where I act in the best interest to make sure that the revenue for outdoor advertising doesn't go anywhere else but comes to PRASA. Then I said, no, that's how we should structure the contract. So I think the commission chair should, of course, go to Proventage and ask them questions other than relying on the affidavit of one conflicted individual who signed and who wants today to dissociate herself. And ask Proventage and Strawberry, under what circumstances did you guys enter this agreement? Who initiated it? And all of those things, Chair. There are many letters that are part of my annexures, but I think that we'd agree that I should put those things now. Now, Chair, so that is the one part of it. The Proventage wins the tender and then later on decide that it will seat. It selects amongst the 19 people, that the 18 other companies Chair, and the names I've listed all of them. Outdoor Network, I don't want to go into detail about these companies. Who chaired that, who recommends that this team should be managed is none other than Mr. Hiro Holele recommends that, no, we've gone through that, we've selected this company. Mr. Holele was also here, Chair, and he didn't remember this thing. He spoke about other things, but this fact, he doesn't tell the commission, Chair. In the same way that they withheld such information on the Sufambo matter. Now, Chair, why then did you go out on tender? And I know later on, when we discussed judgment, a month ago, or a few weeks ago, there was a judgment on this issue, on the outdoor issue. Prime Media succeeded, Chair, even though this thing comes 9 years later. The contract had expired. So that judgment is of an academic, it's academic in a sense that it doesn't have an impact because I think that time has passed, the contract has expired, PRASA is dealing with the matter in the manner that it does. The big issue, Chair, is that, and I elaborate onto this, what is the issue and why were we fighting over who represents us on this matter and why my legal advisor was that? Because we calculated the numbers, Chair. And the numbers were very clear. Prime Media, Continental, were the two leading companies, Chair, onto the PRASA network. They were making more money than PRASA itself, Chair. So as a CEO of PRASA, I'm required, and I never accused Ms. Ngoya that you are acting in the interest of this company. But we're already seeing instances of collusion. Okay. And one of the major issues when I read the recent judgment on this Prime Media issue, I think that the court noted the fact that PRASA didn't oppose. And why did it take 9 years, Chair? You know what? Because it took 9 years, precisely because when the review application is on the table, the beneficiaries, the people who had occupied PRASA sites, continue to make more money on the sites than PRASA itself. So here we've got an instance of a state-owned enterprise that is being robbed of much-needed revenue. I come as CEO and say, no, these guys have been here for long, issue a tender, and let's get the benefit for that. If you look at the numbers, you'll be shocked, because both Prime Media and Continental, Prime Media occupied 29% of the sites that PRASA had. Continental was the second biggest one, but if you look at the amount they were paying, the smallest companies were paying us a higher amount. Okay? So they were paying us, some of the companies were paying us over 1,000 per site. Continental, the Prime Media were paying us even 200 per site. Yet they were on the property. So there was no way as CEO I would allow that situation to persist. And that is why we saw, for example, that our own people colluding with these companies that has made money on PRASA's things. And that is why when you look at some of the companies that were there, and you look at the role of my legal advisor, it is things like this because she's not performing the function. She's not managing cases for PRASA, but she was a CEO. Here's the direction that you take. Now, these people, Chair, will not come and testify that they go and talk about strawberries, okay? And when we look at the arrangement we had with strawberry, it was giving us more money than even the companies per site, Chair, when you look at each site, okay? But if PRASA goes to court, Chair, and say, we're not going to oppose the Prime Media's thing because they're fighting, it was awarded under Montana's term. Who drafted the affidavits and the statements? Ms. Ngoye, Mr. Holele. The very same people who were at the heart of this thing, and the one washed their hands and said, no, it was an irregular contract awarded by under Mr. Montana's, during Mr. Montana's tenure. Okay? They don't take accountability and say, this is our role, this is our role. What is my role as CEO? To act. The primary responsibility to act in the best interest of PRASA is with me, Chair. Now, when we created PRASA CRES, and Ms. Ngoye doesn't say that in her affidavit, Chair, our property, I think we changed the mandate. We changed the mandate a bit earlier, but we had to then separate these functions. And Mr. Ngoya then, of course, she brings suspicion. She said, all of these things, no, Chair. In fact, I had meetings between PRASA-CRES and Intersite, a subsidiary and a new division, because they were refusing to cooperate. There were instances where their collaboration was very important for us to achieve our goals, as it were. So it's got nothing to do with Mr. Moodley. It has to do with the fact that we had a property portfolio, or rather an advertising portfolio, where PRASA was not making money, and two private companies were making money at the expense. Again, Mr. Soni, I want to bring to your attention that when you look at the documents, because I went and asked someone to go to bring me the entire file, and they brought the file. The figures are mentioned there, they're shocking, Chair.
Somebody from PRASA?
Yeah?
Did you ask somebody
No,
from
no,
PRASA?
no, someone, a lawyer. A lawyer said, say, can you get me that file? I want to look at that. Chair, the numbers there are shocking. We're looking at state capture. We say state-owned enterprises do not work. But here are big private companies who are having a feeding frenzy on the assets of these companies. And so that relationship, I took that on. And I didn't leave that chair. I think it was a right decision. When you look at the papers that have been filed, you look at some of the numbers, you'll actually see, Chair, that one of the papers mentioned the numbers and say Prime Media and Continental made 300 million rands out of the portfolio. PRASA only made just a mere 70 million. So the owner of the asset gets 70 million rands. Okay? The private companies who hadn't even invested in that asset, other than to put a board, they make almost 300 million rand. And I read in the judgment that particular effect was not even challenged in that testimony. I'm not saying that you must accept it here. I'm simply mentioning the fact that in my affidavit, I deal with this issue that
No, but Ms. Montana, we've agreed that whatever is in your affidavit, you'll present now.
Yeah, no, Chair, I'm not changing that, Chair.
Yes, he's not changing it.
I'm just simply
He's
saying
just
that
mentioning that-
I'm not urging, I'm not saying that
Yes.
the commission should
Yes.
accept the, what is it called,
Yeah.
the court judgment. That's what I'm
Yeah.
referring to.
Yeah.
But I'm elaborating on the point as agreed.
I think maybe to clarify, because I think I can see what may be causing Mr. Soni concern. My understanding is that when you say in your affidavit, you are not saying that where you need to state what is in your affidavit, you are not stating it because we will see it. You are not saying, you just
I'm not saying
mentioned
Chair.
that.
I'm dealing with it now.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
dealing with it
yes,
now.
yeah, that's my
I'm dealing with it now, Chair, so that,
Yeah, I think Mr. Soni was concerned that we had one agreement earlier on, and if you deviate from it, it shouldn't just be left like that. But I think you have clarified. Yeah.
Chair, in my affidavit, Chair, and you remember I submitted this to the commission in October last year.
Well, I don't remember when, but last year.
It was in October, the 15th of October. This is almost 4 months before this court judgment. Chair, I want to indicate that I state in my affidavit that Prime Media and Continental together occupy 55% of the sites, advertising sites of PRASA. But they paid only 33% of rental income. Whilst companies that occupy 45% of sites paid almost 67% of the rental. So on average, these companies were paying 1,100 per site. But when you look at Prime Media and the other companies, they were paying 200 rands. So it's a huge gap. Now, and I make a calculation that if we were to increase...
Now, let me just to recollect the whole context about this. This is a transaction in terms of which a company that wants to advertise on property belonging to PRASA or its subsidiary,
Yes.
they put up whatever they want to advertise, it's on PRASA's property or the subsidiary,
Indeed, Chair.
and they, as long as that advert is there, they pay per month, is that right?
They pay per month, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So Chair, you'll see that, and I say that if they were to pay the same amount, Strawberry, Prime Media and Continental would basically increase the revenue income for PRASA on the advertising portfolio by almost 122%, Chair. And these numbers correlate exactly with what is contained in that court, that litigation that was unfolding, Chair. But the court, I think, I'm not saying it made the wrong decision, but the court, if PRASA doesn't oppose and say, PRASA, Mr. Holele is there, Ms. Ngoy is there, they allow Prime Media to go to court, and then PRASA ultimately doesn't file. And you see my legal advisor say, but this law firm that is representing us is giving us advice that we think is actually not protecting our own interest. And we think we should change, we should change that. So these are the factual issues. And I thought if someone was fair, like Ms. Ngoy, who says we must act in the best interest of the company, should raise all those issues. And if she feels that Strawberry, Chair, there's no evidence, I've listened to these things, I've never had one evidence that says the relationship between Proventage, Stroke, Mjanji, and Strawberry. If someone says, well, that relationship was started by Montana, he's got interest in it, then we'll be having a discussion here. Nothing of that sort. What we have is insinuations. I met Strawberry after the contract had been signed. At that time, we'd also now shifted the portfolio to PRASA Crest, not to PRASA Corporate. Chair, this is an ongoing thing. Ms. Ngoy was part of discussion on when I went to the board of PRASA in 2010. I said 3 things to the board, Chair, which is relevant to this matter. I said, after the World Cup, we want to have a different organization. So we're going to do 3 things. One, of course, was to recapitalize the asset of this company. The second thing was, of course, to sustain rail operations. But the third one, Chair, was to ensure that we maximize income from the properties and the assets that we have. And that will then separate PRASA Intersite and create a new division. The other one will continue being a subsidiary to invest in assets. For example, the assets that include telecoms lines, so that we can rent that to telecommunication companies, and they pay a fee for that, to access that. But the property portfolio, our landlord will become a PRASA, a CRES. And that is why to this very day, I understand that portfolio is still being managed there, Chair. But at the heart of this thing, Chair, is the fact that we have people who project themselves as revolutionaries, anti-corruption busters, but in real terms are actually protecting the interest of established companies that are making money at the expense of PRASA. Strawberry, Chair, I don't even know who's the shareholder there. Chair, I've never, the only time that Mr. Modley would speak to me, he'll want to talk to me about security, either what work they're doing and all of those things. Not Strawberry, Chair. It's not one of the companies, and I think the commission is obliged, Chair, to go and obtain an affidavit from the CEO of Proventage, or what is the consortium that was called Mjanji House. How did you come to that? But the documents that I have, Chair, including the many emails, it shows that Mrs. Ngoy is making a major U-turn, creating a story when email evidence at that time suggested that she was working. That is why she can't even tell this commission that the agreement to cede and that Intersite to enter into an agreement with Strawberry as a result of that cessation that PRASA approved was signed by me as the CEO of Intersite. And she must then say, I didn't want to sign it. I was forced by Mr. Montana. Chair, at that time there was none. Now she's trying to think about it to bring it, and that is why she can conclude 15.2, Chair, by saying, at the time I was already the CEO of Intersite. She doesn't take it to its logical conclusion. At the time I was already the CEO of Intersite and accordingly signed the agreement between Intersite and I think. So it's about Lucky Montana. Lucky Montana was captured by Roy Moodley when the facts are very clear, Chair, and that's what I'm outlining. And she never, this affidavit, Chair, it's so disappointing because the entire affidavit doesn't, it talks about a law firm that is removed. But the most important issue is PRASA as a public entity getting value from the portfolio it owns. It's not even being dealt with. And I think that's where the problem is, Chair. So
Yes.
that is my, Mr.
Yes.
Soni, my submission. And this submission, Chair, you'll find it's when we deal with my affidavit later on,
It will
I
be
elaborate on the details in there.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that's what you had to say about paragraph 15 and its subparagraphs.
In the Chair.
Yeah, okay. I see we're at 20 past.
I
One.
didn't want to interrupt.
No, but it's fine. Maybe we should adjourn now. Let's adjourn now, and then we will resume at 2:20. We adjourn.